Hello, good evening. Welcome to St. Peter's in Hove. I'm Father Alexander, and I think we're now 79 steps into our walking tour through the Bible, and we now come to the four books of the Kings, or the first two books of Samuel and the first two books of the Kings, as it's sometimes called. But it's four books divided up. It's one work, really, which is telling us about the birth of Samuel all the way through to the extinction of the royal family of Judah, the exile. So several hundred years and described in great detail. The opening chapter describes the conception of Samuel, what happens before Samuel is born. Elkanah, an Ephraimite, has two wives, as was common in those days. He goes to Shiloh, the temple, every year to worship, and he takes the two wives. And of course, this depresses the beloved wife, Hannah, because she only has one portion to sacrifice, whereas her rival, Peninnah, has got lots of children. And of course, the lack of a child is the greatest curse that can befall upon you if you're a Jewish woman. You're meant to be a Jewish wife. You're meant to be a Jewish mother as well. And he says to her, Hannah, why are you crying? Why are you not eating anything? Why are you so sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons? Elkanah is very affectionate, very loving. This couple are in love. This couple love each other. And he says, look, we don't have any sons, but isn't the fact that we love each other, isn't that enough for you? And it's not enough for her. And so she goes into the temple and she prays. And she prays, moving her lips almost in great distress, in great agony, if you like. And of course, maybe she's sort of moving up and down as she's praying, and her lips are moving. And Eli, the priest, assumes that she is drunk. She's swaying and she's drunk. And the fact that she's talking under her breath. But people do talk under their breath when they're praying. She prays with great fervor. Now, what we see here is, it's very interesting, we see an intimate relationship between Hannah and Elkanah. Goodness knows what Elkanah's relationship with his other wife is like, though they do have lots of children. So there's one intimate relationship between a man and a woman. And we also have an intimate relationship between the Lord and Hannah herself. Hannah prays to the Lord. She speaks to God just as she speaks to her husband. She says to the Lord, Lord God of hosts, should you condescend to notice the humiliation of your servant and keep her in mind instead of disregarding your servant and give her a boy? I will give him to the Lord for the whole of his life. No razor shall ever touch his head. So in the bitterness of her soul, she prays this. She prays the Lord with many tears, and she made this vow. In other words, if God gives her a son, she will give the son back to God. Now, we often bargain with God, don't we? This is the prayer of petition, which is, of course, supposed to be the lowest form of prayer. Give me a son, and in return, I will give the son back to you to be your servant. And then Eli, she has this conversation with Eli, who's a bit gruff. And he says, look, you're drunk. Go, sober up. And she said, no, I'm not. And she explains the problem to him, and he's more sympathetic. And he says, go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant what you have asked of him. Now, all Eli says, essentially, is, I do hope your prayers are successful. He's not actually pronouncing that she will have a son. He's just saying, oh, well, I hope the Lord has pity on you. I hope you get a successful answer to your prayers. Anyway, she goes away. She then conceives a son, and then she stays away from the temple until the son is weaned, that's to say, no longer depends on his mother's milk. And then she brings a son, who by that time assumed is at least 3 years old, to Eli and said, this is the boy I was praying for. Here, you have him. Now I make him over to the Lord for the whole of his life. He is made over to the Lord. They then worship the Lord there. Now, this is very strange. What's the point of this story? The point of this story is, of course, that Samuel is a very special boy. Well, every boy is a very special boy. Every child that's longed for is a special child. He's a very special boy. He's born by a particular providence of the Lord, and he is dedicated to the Lord from his youth upwards. He is a little boy when he's sent to the temple, and he's then left in the temple. Now, in the second chapter, we discover that Hannah and Elkanah only see Samuel once a year. They go up to the temple, and she brings him new clothes every year and things like that. And so the poor little boy is deprived of his mother's love and his father's affection, but he seems to be okay about that. In the good old days, in medieval England, it was common to send little children away to be pages in the houses of great lords. And Samuel's a bit like that. He's been sent off to boarding school, and he gets a very, very rare glimpse of his parents once a year. I wonder what those meetings were like. I can remember being sent off to boarding school at a very tender age, 8, and not seeing my parents at all and feeling terrible about it. But we never get told that he's miserable in this. I remember reading this as a very young child, thinking, but surely, poor little boy, without his parents. Now, she gives him, Samuel was in the Lord's service, a child wearing a linen loincloth, chapter 2. His mother used to make him a little coat, which he brought him each year when she came up with her father to offer the yearly sacrifice. Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife, saying, "May the Lord give you an heir by this woman in exchange for the one she's made over to the Lord." And then she goes on to have other children. Now, Eli is obviously a good person. There's no doubt about that. But his 2 sons are ghastly. His 2 sons are degenerates because they don't live up to what their father is. So they're degenerates. And it then is their degeneracy is seen by the fact that they're priests, because the priesthood is hereditary, but they're very bad priests. They clearly don't believe in doing things the right way. They stick their forks into the pot before they should, and so on and so forth. This is explained to us in chapter 2, verses 12 to 17. Now, the sons of Eli were scoundrels. They cared nothing for the Lord. So, in other words, they're like a pair of lapsed Catholics who just happen to have inherited a position in the Catholic Church and carry out their position without actually believing anything they're doing. This is quite degenerate of them, because don't forget, we're in the very early time of Israel, and yet already there are children of Israel who don't deserve to be children of Israel, who don't act like children of Israel. And everybody complains about them. But of course, because they've got this, well, why aren't they sacked? Because they've got this hereditary position, nobody can do anything about it. So they're mucking up the sacrifices and so on. We can't really understand it. It doesn't strike us as being particularly heinous, but obviously it's a really bad thing, according to the person who's edited this story, because it's the same person who's edited the book of Deuteronomy. And so these 2 sons of Eli are, Phineas and Hophni, are very bad people, not living up to the law of Deuteronomy. So we have the baddies in this story, and we have the goodie. The goodie is obviously Eli, and even though Samuel is no relation of Eli, Samuel is the one who most embodies the spirit of Eli, as we'll see. The other thing about Samuel is, behind every great man, and he's obviously marked out for future greatness, as we'll see, there is a great woman, and the great woman in this case is Hannah. Now, after Hannah has had her baby, after she's given birth to Samuel, she utters at the beginning of chapter 2 this canticle of Hannah, which is, of course, used in the breviary, I think once a week during morning prayer, the canticle of morning prayer, which is the second of the Psalms. My heart exults in the Lord, my God is my strength lifted up. My mouth derides my foes, for I rejoice in your deliverance. It's a strange song, and because it sounds as if it's a victory song. Now, it's true, she's scored off her rival, as she's called, the other wife, but it's a little bit too militaristic, isn't it? And the bow of the mighty has been broken, she says. But those who are tottering are now braced with strength. The full-fed are hiring themselves out for bread. The hungry need labour no more. The barren woman bears sevenfold, till the mother of many is left desolate. The Lord gives life and death. He brings down to Hades and draws up, etc. Now, it's quite possible that this is some sort of military victory song, and it's been put into Hannah's mouth at this stage. It's true that a part of it, the barren woman bears sevenfold, but the mother of many is left desolate, does seem to fit Hannah's state of life at that point. But at the same time, it could just be a generic way of saying God has turned the tables. God has blessed Israel, and he has confounded the enemies of Israel. That's the main thing. God always does surprising things. He has picked up the weak and the lowly. Israel's just a little kingdom, not even a kingdom, a little nation after all, and he has blessed the tiny nation. He's brought the mighty nations low, which is exactly the same thought behind the Magnificat of Our Lady. And therefore, the Magnificat of Our Lady is often related to the Song of Hannah, and the Song of Hannah is often seen as a prototype for the Magnificat of Our Lady, that the Magnificat of Our Lady is a deliberate echo of the Song of Hannah. Well, we'll see what happens next, won't we? But already the stage is set. We have the holy boy, who is specially chosen. We have the holy priest, who's old. And we have the two wicked sons. What's going to happen? We'll soon find out on our next step in the walking tour through the Bible. Au revoir. Bye for now. Bye.